The way that we're going to do this is we are going to do this with a species called Homo Sticktus. Homo Sticktus. We learned what the prefix Homo means. What does that mean? What's the prefix Homo mean? Aubrey? The same. Yes. All living things have an order and a phylum, and they are organized. And the last two, the genus and the species, are your names. This is a Homo Sticktus, and its genome. The genome is the map of the chromosomes. Your genome consists of how many chromosomes? How many chromosomes do you have? What's your genome? How many chromosomes? Ryan? 44. 44. A lot. Do you agree or disagree with this? What do you disagree with, ma'am? Well, how many do we have? 46. And if I take those 46, how many pairs would that be? 23 pairs. For the Homo Sticktus, there's 2. Because the Homo Sticktus reproduces sexually. And remember, we get our pairs because we get half of our instructions from mom, half from dad. They come together to make a complete set. Now, yesterday, we learned a term. Instead of memorizing this, right here. Remember this? This segment of DNA. What's a segment of DNA called? Lito? What's a segment of DNA called? That is DNA. Yep, that's deoxyribose. But what's a segment called? Terms up here on this board underneath productive struggle. What is it called? Savannah? A gene. And I asked you to memorize that, but that doesn't make sense, right? What we're going to do is we're going to use a different code instead of this big long code. We're just going to use some letters. And I had a term for that letter that was assigned to a code. Does anybody remember that term? What was the term that we used? We said on a section of chromosome, in that chapter, we have paragraphs. I said that we can just use a letter to represent that. Any idea what that term is? Gino?
I need more time.
Okay, buddy. We'll get you some more time. Brenham?
Any variable?
I'm sorry?
Any letter?
Any letter. Okay, yeah, we can use different letters, but I gave a specific term for this. Any idea? Garrett? Any idea? Sure. Serena?
An allele?
An allele. An allele. Yeah. So we're going to use some alleles today because we have chromosomes up on the board. And that chromosome, which is a chapter of the instructions, is broken down into paragraphs. And we're going to focus on specific paragraphs or loci, and they code for a certain characteristic. In this case, for the Homo Sticktus, we're going to look at the characteristic of head shape, arm length, foot direction, and hand color. Okay? And we're going to use these alleles that are listed over here. Pretty simple. So what we're going to start off with is the process that, Mr. and Mrs. Sticktus, they did some things. You know what I'm talking about. That little physical process that occurs to take one gamete from mom, one gamete from dad, bring them together to make a complete set. All right? I'm not going to talk about that process. Nico, if you want to learn about that process, ask your mom and dad. They know it. Okay? Well, what happens is we get one half from mom and one half from dad. In this case, we have 2 chromosomes. So we're going to look at these sections here. This section is for the head shape. And we are going to use the letter A for head shape. So mom, she brings a capital A. For arm length, she brings a capital T. Foot direction, a capital F. And for hand color, a capital E. So dad, he brings to the mix a capital A, a capital T, a capital F, a capital E. Well, now we got one from mom, one from dad, come together to make a complete set. We take these alleles and we put them together to make the genotype. So here, big A, big A, T, T, F, F, E, E, all together just like that. Ta-da! We now have a complete set of instructions. But we don't observe the genotype, we observe phenotypes. So let's take a look. We got capital letter A's for a head shape. I look over here at my alleles, it's a circle. Awesome. So Homo Sticktus has a body and some legs, and next is arm length, T. Well, T codes for long. So they got long arms. Interesting, interesting. I look at the foot direction, capital F's. I look over here, it says the foot directions are to the right. Then I look, and I see I've got big E's here, and that codes for black hands. Interesting. And there we go. An offspring. Mr. and Mrs. Sticktus did the things necessary to fertilize, bring the instructions together to produce a zygote. Here's the instructions, and this is what the offspring looks like. That's the basic, simple premise of this entire process. Half the instructions from mom, half from dad. Bring them together to make a complete set. Now we have the instructions to produce the offspring. Here, the genotype, two-letter code, the phenotype, what we observe. Did you get that written down? Hey, Sean, got it? Awesome, buddy. Good. AJ, you have that written down? I don't even see your science journal out. You should have this out, man. It's great. If I'm writing something down, you should probably be writing something down. Let's try this again. That was fun. Because Mr. and Mrs. Sticktus, well, they don't have a lot to do, and they didn't pay their internet bill, so they're just going to produce another offspring. So let's see how this one works. This time, because the law of independent assortment and that process in meiosis of crossing over means that we can change those instructions a little bit. This time, mom, Mrs. Sticktus, she brings a little a little t, a little f, and a little e. Dad, well, dad brings a little a little t, a little f, and a little e. We now got half the instructions from mom, half from dad, come together to make a complete set. We now can take these alleles and record the genetic code, the genotype. And we've got little a, little a, little t, little t, little f, little e, little e. Well, now that I have a code, I can produce the offspring. So I look over here and I see little a. Little a for the head says the shape is going to be square this time. That's interesting. For the arm length, it's going to be short. Huh. That's different. The foot direction to the left, and the hand colors, what? Ooh, look at there. We now have an offspring, and we can observe the physical traits right there. Gus, does this offspring look like the last one? All right, well, it's the same Mr. and Mrs. Sticktus. But because of these processes, this is where we can start to get the genetic variation. Not too bad, not too bad. We got it. We've got an allele from mom, an allele from dad. Put them together, we get a genotype. The genotype codes for something that we can observe, and that's the phenotype. Let's try another one. This time, I'm going to bring a big A, big T, big F, and a big E. I'm going to bring a little A, a little T, a little F, and a little E. Now that we have an allele from mom and an allele from dad, we can make the genotype. Dun, 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 dun. There we go. Gino, mask up. Is there a problem? Well, mom just brought the big A, that's all. That's just what she brought. Law of independence. Wait, is there a problem? See some issues?
How can you have a big A and a little A and it won't make a circle north to north?
Interesting. Interesting. When we look at the code now, we notice over here we've got alleles that are different. We got some for a circle, some for a square. Talk with the people around you. What do you think this offspring is going to look like? Talk with them. What do you think? What are our options?
I say square.
Say square. What makes you think it's going to be a square?
I just think the little A's gonna overpower the big A.
Ooh, interesting. Interesting.
Brown.
What's the stop sign? The head? Oh, an octagon. Okay, so you think maybe the head will be a completely different shape.
It'll
Interesting.
be an oval.
What do you guys think? A mixture, like half of it, like maybe a square jaw and a round top? Ooh, interesting, interesting. What do you guys think?
I think one's dominant over the other.
A hexagon?
Which one?
Interesting.
Facing right and left.
Foot going both directions?
Medium size arms.
Medium size arm. Interesting. Interesting. What do you think?
Big A?
What do you think?
I would say you are correct.
An oval? All right. So I'm gonna draw this offspring, and maybe you might pick up on something. Maybe. So. Talk with the people around you. See if you notice something. Go ahead. We do. We always get half the instructions from mom, half from the dad.
That ended up like the first one.
So whenever there's a big and a little, the big one always
Doesn't matter.
prevails.
Genetic. I don't think it does.
Interesting. What do you think? Was that what you were expecting? Did you expect that offspring to look like that? Okay. What was different? What you thought, Mayshawn? Okay, all right, that's good. Trinity, is this what you expected? What do you notice when you look at this offspring? Maybe compare the phenotypes to the genotypes. What is your observation? Observation. Savannah? Okay. Okay. Gus, do you agree or disagree with what Savannah has to say? Interesting. So I noticed that you used the term overpower. Well, that's all right. It's all right. Does anybody have a different observation? Any other observations? Braylon.
Even though the letter size was different,
Uh-huh.
it still ended up like the first two.
Saying this one here kind of looks exactly like the very first one, doesn't it? Interesting. Interesting. We bring instructions from mom and dad, but we notice that there's a difference here in the size of the letters. And the size of the letters indicate something. So we look here and we can see that there's capital letters or uppercase letters and lowercase letters or, small letters. And these differences indicate something. One of the alleles will mask or cover the instructions for the other one. Which one do you think will mask the instructions for the other? Which one? On? The capital letter. This one. The capital letters and the size of the letter indicate something. It indicates that this allele in basic classic genetics, that this will dominate. And this is called a dominant. Oops, got that wrong. Hold on. This is called a dominant allele. A dominant allele. A dominant allele. The lowercase one, the smaller one, is called a recessive allele. You'll note that when I write dominant, I use a capital letter D. Helps me recall the fact that the capital letters are dominant, and when I write recessive, I use a lowercase. It helps me recall that the lower cases are recessive. Let's take a look at these genotypes for the head shape. If I ask you, are these alleles, are they the same or different? The same or different? What would you say? Gino?
Different.
Why?
Because the capital letter could cover the lowercase letter.
I like that because you understand the difference between a dominant and a recessive, but how are they different? They're both the letter A's. What's different about them?
The size.
The size. Do you agree or disagree with that, Brett?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the size is different. We learned a prefix for different. What is the prefix that we learned for different? What was it? Oh, I love hearing pages turn. I love hearing your pages turn. That means you're looking. Trinity? I'm sorry, ma'am? Serena, do you agree or disagree with this? Hetero. Yeah, we learned that hetero means different. Now, when you bring mom's alleles and dad's alleles together in fertilization and you get a complete set, that's how you came to be. You were a zygote. Remember that term zygote, that very first cell? These are called heterozygous. 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 This is a term to describe the genotype. If I say it's heterozygous, that means that there's one dominant allele and one recessive allele. heterozygous. So let's make another, shall we? Mr. and Mrs. Sticktus, you know, they're very affectionate. They want a big family. They've got 3 children so far. So let's see. Here we go. We got a set from mom, a set from dad. We got the alleles. Let's put them together to make our genotypes. Now, whenever we have a heterozygous genotype, we typically put the dominant allele first. Why? Just because. The order doesn't make a difference, but we just typically put them together, and then we put the dominant allele first. This will play out a little later in, well, not next week, but when we come back from Thanksgiving, why this really helps doing it this way. So we would put just like this. Then we have this here and here. Do you know you have a question? Why did I put the big A first?
No,
Okay.
there, you have a lowercase a and then a capital T and S.
Uh-huh.
So
This-
you can do that?
Yeah, see, this is, remember when I talked about crossover and meiosis? In that process, some of the instructions kind of switch a little bit. And yeah, this can be any combination of capital and lowercase letters. And we can continue to do this. So let's see what this offspring looks like. So I have a big A and a little a, but now we know that the big A is the dominant allele, and that will be the phenotype. And I look over here, and I can see that it'll be a circle. This is pretty easy. 2 dominant. That means they're going to have long arms. So long arms. Here, I got 2 dominant alleles. That means I look at the alleles, I'm going to see that the feet are going to go to the right. And then here I've got another heterozygous. I got a dominant and a recessive. Well, I look over here, and the dominant is black. Look at that black hands. Like this. Interesting. We learned a term for this genotype. What's the term for this genotype? What is the term for this? Trinity? Yes, heterozygous. Hetero meaning what? Yep, this is heterozygous. Let's look at this one. What do you notice about these alleles? Are they the same or different? Alana? They're the same. So these 2 here, this is heterozygous. What do you think? What prefix might we use for this one? Gus? Homozygous. That's good. This is homozygous. The prefix homo meaning the same. I like it. I like it. And here's our offspring. Does it look like any of the other offsprings? Slightly different, right? Do you look exactly like your brothers and sisters? Unless you're an identical twin. You don't. So it's this process that continues. These changes here. Let's do one more. One more. Just because Mr. and Mr. Sticktus, well, they really like each other.
You won't like too much.
I know. So, mom and dad. Mom and dad. So in this combination, here we go. We've got half from mom, half from dad. We put them together in the genotype. Big A, big A. We got little t, little t. We got big F, and little e, little e. Take a look at what the genotype codes for. We've got a circle head. Here's our body. Looks like we've got short arms. Feet, heterozygous with a dominant allele. The dominant allele will mask the recessive. That means the feet are going to go to the right. And then the hand color, little e, they're recessive, and they'll be white. The terms that we have, what's the term we have for this one when we have one big, one little? One big, one little. What's the term? Lito? Heterozygous. Here, we've got two little e's. What's the term we have from this? Savannah? Say again? Yeah, homozygous. Up here, we've got big A, big A. What's the term? Alana? Say again? Yeah, this one here, homozygous. Wait a minute. Homozygous. Homozygous. How can we tell the difference between these two? Any ideas? How can we? Because if I say, hey, these are homozygous, how can we tell the difference? Because they're both the same. This is little e, this is big A, big A. How can we tell the difference? Gino, what do you think?
If the letters are identical and don't have a dip and if the letters are identical and are the same, like a capital and a capital and a lowercase and a lower.
Yeah. So, but how would we distinguish the difference between this homozygous set and this homozygous set? Any ideas? Some of your friends have some ideas. You want to call on somebody that's got an idea? Who? Say it?
Yes.
Oh, Gary. Size? Okay, the size of the letters matters, yeah. Savannah, any ideas? Yes, they are. Could we use these terms to help distinguish them? Serena, what do you think? Yeah. So this is homozygous dominant. And this is homozygous recessive.